so this person's automatically going to hell because by our teachings, white people are the only ones in heaven. That's when you start to realize we were just a tiny little speck in the world. And who were we to think that we're the chosen ones of God and everyone else is going to burn in hell?
You're saying those thoughts came once you started attending
once I went
a
to
public school.
Because my first friend I made was not a white person. And then I remember crying, being like, so this person's automatically going to hell because by our teachings, white people are the only ones in heaven.
Oh, you didn't talk about that. So what are the racial teachings around skin color?
I believe this comes from Joseph Smith, The Great War in Heaven, where there's the battle between good and evil. This is what happened before any of us were ever born. We were all angels in heaven with God and Jesus and Satan, and we were all fighting about if we should take Jesus's plan or Satan's plan. Mm-hmm. So the ones who chose Jesus's plan, which was us white people, and they went on this side and they get to be members of earth, whatever. And then there was the demons of hell who chose Satan's side, so they never get to be born. And then there was the fence sitters who could not decide Jesus or Satan, and those are all the people who are not white.
Who are brown-skinned. Mm-hmm. And that's absolutely been taught as Mormon, mainstream LDS church doctrine for at least a century. Now the church distances, just in the past decade, the LDS Church will distance itself from that teaching, but I was raised as a traditional Latter-day Saint with that teaching of the fence sitters in the pre-existence and became the people of color in
and what we believed, I don't know if they believed that in the LDS Church, but what we believed is they get a chance to come to earth, but
So let me correct one part on there, and that is the fact that them saying that it was people of color, that the people who were fence setters, and they were the people of color. Nah. Joseph Smith taught that those were the black people. Plain and simply. Not the people of color, not the Asians, not the Native Americans, not the Arabs, not anybody else, not the Indians from India. But those were just the black people. And of course, in the commentary of that video, people are, I don't see how any black person can be a Mormon, knowing that this type of teaching was going on, and they knew it, and even though the churches tried to distance themselves from it since then, actually since the 1970s, since Jimmy Carter told them that he'll take away their 501c3. Oh yeah, they are distancing themselves from it now, and people saying, I don't see how I can be a black Mormon. Well, how are you Christian at all, is my question. How are you Christian at all? And the reason why I say that, because these people were merely a sign of the time. They were a sign of the time. They were a sign of a time of slavery and European colonialism. And during this time frame of slavery and European colonialism, it was normal. It was natural. It was the status quo for the majority of Christendom to associate that black people did not have souls, that black people were less than human, and that they didn't go to heaven. Yeah, they let you have your church. They let you believe it a little bit. But just as the Mormons taught you that the only way that a black person can go to heaven, which the video cut off before she gets to it, is as a servant to the delightsome white people who have the immaculate marriage, right? So that was the only way a black person can go to heaven. But those of you who are still Christian, this was taught in all of Christianity during the colonialism and the scramble of Africa and slavery in the Americas and slavery in South America. And what has the church tried to do? Distance themselves from it. Distance themselves from that history. Even today, there are going to be some black people who come into this comment and say, well, what they did was they took the African religion, the African spirituality, and then they rewrote it and mishandled it and mistranslated to fit white Christianity, but it's really a black African religion, and they stole it. But you still read the Bible. You still reading the Bible. Oh, see, you got to read between the lines, and you got to read the code, because it's between the lines, and it's coded, and it's between the lines. No, you lying to yourself is what you're doing. They didn't take this book from the Africans. This book was written in the Levant. Oh, well, see, the Levant used to be Africa, and then they built the Suez Canal to divide it from Africa. Look at me. Sub-Saharan Africa was not Christian. Sub-Saharan Africa were tribal religions. Until the transatlantic and trans-Sahara slave trade, Christianity nor Islam was deep in Africa. Oh, Christianity was in Ethiopia. Christianity didn't come to Ethiopia to the 4th century BC, 4th century CE is when it came. 330, Axiom Empire, Ethiopia, and that's as far as it went. That's as far as it went. Judaism possibly more than likely was there earlier, for a few centuries early, but it was in small short supply. Small short supply. Islam, came much later, but Ethiopia is not the whole of Africa. Ethiopia is not southern Africa at all. Ethiopia was not the place that they took slaves into the Americas. So you can squash that bullshit. Why are you still Christian? It is a religion that condones slavery. Oh, no, see, what it's indentured servitude. No. Read Leviticus 25 again. And read past the part where it talks about you can take a slave of your own race, your own tribe, and you can make them a slave, but then they got to be freed in 7 years. But of your foreigners, you can make them a slave and pass them along to generations. Read it again, because you are utilizing cognitive dissonance just so that you don't have to recognize and realize that you're following a bullshit, racist ass religion. And it started out racist in its inception, regardless of who you try to claim had it, and it's still racist to this day. But you got to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibrations.